How do I get ISO certification? Welcome! This is the Oxford Quality Centre's short summary overview of the steps involved in how to get an ISO standard installed and certification achieved. There are a series of 10 steps, as laid out here, to be followed when installing an ISO standard and preparing the organisation for certification. The first step is to carry out a gap analysis to identify what parts of the existing systems can be used, what parts will need to be altered or replaced, and what additional parts will need to be created to ensure that the requirements of the standard are satisfied. The second step is to choose the certifier that will be assessing your systems. This will impact the time frame, the cost, and the profile of the certification you can get, because different certifiers operate in different ways. For example, not all are accredited to UKAS, the UK body representing the ISO, so the resultant certification will not have that extra level of recognition. Also, smaller certifiers tend to be cheaper and faster, but are not as well recognised, even if they are fully UKAS accredited. The third step is to create the policies, objectives, procedures and reviews that you've identified you need after the gap analysis in step 1. If you already have some, these can and should be built in wherever possible to minimise the change on daily life for your operatives. The fourth step is to train your staff on the new/altered procedures and on why the ISO systems have been installed in the first place. This will ensure that they're aware of what the new procedures are to achieve and why it's vital that they are followed. At this point, the fifth step is to undergo the Stage 1 assessment. The certifier chosen in Step 2 will visit to check that the procedures and systems installed are in compliance with what is required under the relevant standard. If there are any mistakes, then these may not be vital and the certifier will just point these out. However, if there are any significant problems, then the Stage 1 assessment will have to be repeated until these have been rectified. Step 6. Once the Stage 1 assessment has been successfully completed, the organisation must operate in accordance with and using the new procedures, reports, reviews and controls it's created. This is to demonstrate that it not only has the systems correctly installed, but is using them throughout its operations, i.e. not just when it suits or only when there's no emergency. Once the operations have been running under the new procedures for a while, the seventh step is that internal auditing procedures kick in. Each procedure is checked periodically to ensure that the procedure is being used correctly, and where it is not, that either changes are made to ensure it is used correctly, or, if the procedure itself proves to be inappropriate, the procedure itself is formally changed. Step 8, the management review, involves a complete check of the procedures, the reports since the previous management review, the audit results, and also consideration of the policies and objectives of the organisation and the changes expected in how the organisation will operate in the future. Taken together, the systems can be adapted to ensure that they remain current, cross-check the problems identified from feedback have been successfully addressed, and to ensure that the system is ready for assessment again. Step 9 is the Stage 2 assessment. The certifier will again visit to check that the system it agreed was in compliance with the standard is actually being operated and not sidestepped. The certifier will check audit reports, change logs, procedure records, and whatever other registers may be required to ensure that everything is up to date, correctly completed, and still in conformance with the standard. Minor issues discovered will result in a requirement to improve by the next assessment visit, usually a year later. Major problems could even fail the system completely, although most certifiers prefer to offer the organisation an intermediate step to demonstrate it has completed changes within a short time frame. Step 10. On successful completion of the Stage 2 assessment, the certifier will issue the formal documentation to allow the organisation to display the relevant logos and to make the press releases and so forth. If you want to know anything more about how to get an ISO standard installed and certification achieved, please contact the Oxford Quality Centre as shown here. We hope that this has proven a useful summary and look forward to hearing from you.